Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Leah Massey, and today I'm excited to be joined by my guest, Howard Betnar. Howard, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
To start things off, can you tell us what drew you to the public service and how did your path lead to becoming a city manager?
Uh, my path to being a city manager, a municipal manager, I was always interested in politics. And I went to St. Francis College, which is now St. Francis University, with political science. And my thoughts at that time were to go on to law school. But as I got into the political science, curriculum and that, and about municipal management, it fascinated me more. And so I got my degree in political science. Then I went to the American University down in Washington, D.C. Received a master's in public administration. And I think it was down there because down in the D.C. area, you have every form of government. You have federal, state, local. You have the District of Columbia, which is its own separate entity, and being able to interact with all of them because you're always doing projects, papers, or whatever. To be able to interact, it really got me excited, with that. Uh, it led to a strange path that when I got my first job, it was not in municipal management, but with the Beaver Butler County Area Agency on Aging,
Oh.
which I really enjoyed. I
Mhm.
mean, we served well over 10 to 15,000 clients a year in Beaver and Butler County. We had the department that I was the head of, we had 26 different services for the elderly in-home
Mhm.
senior centers. And but I still wanted to get into municipal management. So my first interview was in Forest Hillsborough, and they always ask you, when you haven't been a municipal manager, well, what makes you think you can do it?
Mhm.
And I said, well, I said, I've worked with aging. I said, we deal with, like I said, 10 to 15,000 clients a year. Your population is 6,000.
Mhm.
You purchase rock salt. I said, our senior centers, we purchase, three, 400,000 meals a year. So
Mhm.
I said, I different terminology, but the process is the same. You have to have services for people. You have to fund them. You have to make sure that whoever is providing that service is doing what they're supposed to. Well, that led, first job was in Forest Hills.
Oh, okay.
And that was in 1986. And since then, I went from Forest Hills to Green Tree Borough,
Mhm.
from Green Tree Borough to West Mifflin. And I spent 16 years in West Mifflin. And then I came to Clairton in 2011. So on April 25th of this year, I'll have my 15th anniversary here in Clairton. So.
Now, you had started to say kind of what your day looks like. So, what does a typical day look like for you? Is there such a thing?
Not typical. I mean, there's days that I'll look at my calendar and think, oh, geez, I have nothing that's scheduled. So,
Mhm.
you think I'm going to get a lot done this day,
Yeah.
but then boom, it blows up.
Yeah.
That there's something that, I meet every morning with all of our department heads,
Mhm.
public works, police, code enforcement, see if there's anything there. Always in touch with the council members and the
Mhm.
mayor because everybody in the community knows they see them daily. So they'll, have a problem, they're going to call them, they call me. Like I said, you're always dealing with issues that, uh, like I said, at one point, a year or so ago, we had 18 active grants going
Mm.
and for different projects,
Yeah.
and with all of those, there's requirements. Everybody that gives you money, they have requirements that they want, so you
Mhm.
have to make sure that you're doing that and you're planning for the future. I mean, Clairton does have a lot of problems. It was an Act 47 distressed
Mhm.
community for almost 28 years.
Mhm.
We came out of it back in 2015, but for those 28 years, they didn't have the funds to do a lot of projects. They had a lot of times it was tough meeting payroll.
Mhm.
But we came out, we're on a better footing now. And so we're trying to do things, with paving, demolitions, keeping, right now we have the pool, we're replacing the liner. That's
Mhm.
our best asset. So, you have projects like that that you can't just say, okay, we did it, now we can sit back and not worry. There's always going to be something,
Yeah.
whether it's getting ready. I mean, nobody wants to hear this, but getting ready now for next winter.
Mhm.
We're getting the plow trucks, make sure, okay, we have to replace this truck. Do we need a new plow?
Mhm.
There's always something that's going to go on. And like I said, people are emailing you, calling you,
Yeah.
stopping in. Um, and you can't just say, well, just leave me alone. I don't
Yeah.
want to do anything today. You don't want to be rude. So, like I said, there's nothing that I can say, well, this is the same every day. There's
Yeah.
always something new. And there's some exciting things. Like I was telling you before
Yeah.
about the grant that we had with the state where
Mhm.
we had a problem, and then that's the good news that you're
Yeah.
going to have,
Right.
and you think that's what you like to hear. So you hope at the end of the day you leave with a smile on your face. Most days I do.
Now, what's something people misunderstand about your role?
I think the thing that people misunderstand about my role, and maybe even just the local government, is that we don't have the control to do everything.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm the city manager, so okay, we have the departments. I have to make sure that the operations here run smoothly, but I don't have the ultimate power to just go and tell people you have to do this because I
Mm.
say so. I
Right.
mean, we have a code book that is 3 inches thick,
Mhm.
with ordinances that council has passed, that that's what we have to abide by. There are multitude of state, federal laws that impact us. So I think the biggest thing is that we can't just do stuff because people want us to.
Mhm.
Um, Not in Clareton, but when I was in West Mifflin, I had someone call me and they said, I was over at that Gabriel store. And I
Mhm.
said, okay, what's the problem?
Yeah.
Well, this clerk was rude. I want you to fire them. And I
Yeah.
said, that's a private store. Well,
Yeah.
aren't you the borough manager?
Mhm.
They don't understand that, like I
Right.
said, we don't have all the authority that we would like. I
Mhm.
mean, we have to, live within the rules and regulations that the federal, the state, that the city council passes.
Yeah.
And, uh, and we have a building code that, people have to obey it. And, it's not that we don't want to help people. It's just, these are the rules.
Yeah.
And until they change, we have to enforce them.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, how would you explain your role as a city manager to someone who's never heard of it?
It's basically to make sure that the city operations, like I said, we have a multitude of departments. We have police, public works, the fire department, code enforcement. We have an outside emergency, EMS, emergency services agency that we deal with. But to make sure that they're all operating the best they can.
Mhm.
We have people, we have employees. Like right now, we're looking for summer employees. So,
Mhm.
it's getting those applications in. Are the people qualified? Can they do the job? Um, it's just making sure that the city operations here are operating as efficiently as we can,
Mhm.
and to make sure that that we do the best. We are the stewards of the tax money.
Mhm.
So when people pay their taxes, we want to make sure that nobody can say, well, you're just wasting money,
Mhm.
because we have to fund things. And like I said, it's making sure that everybody operates within the rules.
Okay. Now, how does the city government typically interact with residential and commercial real estate transactions?
The best thing we do with them is, like I said, when someone is going to sell their house
Mhm.
or even refinance it, whether it's a commercial or a residential, we always highly suggest that they get a lien letter, uh, which they can request through the finance office. And there's three things that you need. One, the lien letter request, a filled out occupancy permit,
Mhm.
and if you're buying the property as is, uh, there's an affidavit that says you will not occupy it until it is brought up to code.
Mhm.
So once we get the lien letter request, we can do our lien letter to tell you, what liens the city has on it. Now, the only problem that I see, and this is be something, is that when you're selling your house, you have to come to the city to find out if there's any liens, okay? And we would have liens on garbage, real estate, if there were any code enforcement
Mhm.
violations that were not taken care of. But you also have to check with the school district.
Mhm.
They have a delinquent tax collector. The city has a delinquent tax collector that you have to check with for liens from years back.
Mhm.
You have to check with the county.
Mhm.
You have to check with the municipal authority for sewage. So it's unfortunate that there's a multitude of stops you have to go to.
Mhm.
It would really be nice, but we haven't figured out a way yet to saying, okay, you come to this place and you can find out what city, school, county, sewage, or anybody else, what liens there are. But uh, like I said, that you get the lien letter, you fill out the occupancy. Within a day or two, we can have the lien letter back to you if all the forms.
Right.
We've had people, they submit a lien letter but no occupancy permit,
Mm.
or they submit the occupancy permit, no lien letter, or they submit the stuff but no fee.
Mhm.
So once everything, it's a quick turnaround, a day or two that we can do it. Uh, but that's the one big thing. We always recommend that for people because we've had people that I believe they think they're pulling one over on us that, they sell property, but the buyer doesn't get a lien letter.
Mhm.
And then when they find out that all of those liens are now theirs, because
Yeah.
it goes with the property,
Right.
not the individual, and they find out they have a, $3,000 garbage bill. Well, did you get a lien letter? Well, no. So we highly recommend that. But where we would also is that, like I said, with the occupancy permit, that, George, our code enforcement officer, will go out and do an occupancy inspection,
Mhm.
before he gives you the authority to occupy a
Right.
structure, whether it's commercial or residential. So, he has a fine list that he goes through, and if there's something that has to be corrected, he sends you a notice that, and it's to help the person.
Right.
We're not trying to just, be nasty. It's to help you that your structure is safe. And then again, if there are things later on down the road, if you want to, put on an addition,
Mhm.
if you want to do a repair, some, repairs require a building permit. Others do not. Like if
Right.
you're going to replace your shingles, you don't need a building permit for that. If you're
Mhm.
going to replace your windows, you need a building permit for that. So there's different things. And, when you talk with George, he can tell you what you're doing. We've
And
had
George is who again?
George is our code
Okay.
enforcement officer, George Glagola.
Mhm.
We also that there's sometimes there are zoning questions
Mhm.
that would come up that somebody wants to buy a piece of property and they want to know, can I do this in this building?
Yeah.
And we check the zoning because we have like 6 or 7 different zoning districts. Each one has different requirements. Some things are permitted, others they're not.
Yeah.
Others it might be a conditional use. So if there's any question, we would hope that people would check with us because we don't want you to buy a building and think, okay, I'm going to do activity A in this building. Then you find out by the zoning you can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, because,
That's a good
and,
point.
and we can't rezone just your piece of property. That's against state law.
Mm.
So that's we encourage people that if you have questions, come and ask us. I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, we've had people that they've put a deck on or something and find out that they're over the property line, and you think there's a setback requirement. So if people, get in touch with us beforehand, and most people do,
Mhm.
uh, we can tell them, okay, here's the requirements. And if there's something that, for example, if you wanted to had a business and it required you to have 15 parking spaces,
Mhm.
but, the way it is, you can only have 10.
Yeah.
You can go to our zoning hearing board and ask for a variance
Mhm.
to saying, look, we just don't have the room for
Right.
15. I mean, we can't have them,
Yeah.
3 feet,
Mhm.
and the zoning hearing board can grant you a variance. It says, okay, fine, you can do it with 10, not 15. So there's different ways, and that can be residential or commercial.
What's other requests that you can ask for variance? I'll think about those. What other things besides
Um,
parking?
you
Yeah.
could ask for a fence. I mean, anything with zoning.
Okay.
If you're going to, and usually it deals with construction. If you said, look, I want to put this deck on my house, and I'm not going to go beyond the house, but my house is only 3 feet from the
Mhm.
property line, and I need 5 feet. Well, they can grant you the variance because when you built your house, for example, the zoning ordinance could have said you can build within a foot of the property
Mhm.
line. So you did it.
Yeah.
Well, now if it says that the rules change that you have to have a 5 foot setback, well, you can't move the house.
Yeah.
So you can request a variance on that. Uh, but like I said, it can be anything with the building code or the zoning ordinance. You can request a variance. Now you have to be able to show a hardship.
Mhm.
You can't just say, "Well, I want to build over the property line." I don't care what my neighbor thinks. I
Okay.
mean, that wouldn't pass. But like I said, you can go and ask for a variance as long as you have a good reason.
Okay.
And we don't have a lot of zoning hearing board requests, but in the time I've been here, they've never turned anybody down.
Mhm.
Yeah, because it's not infringing on your neighbor or whatever. It's just a legitimate, it could be a property squeeze. You just don't have the room.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, I think you addressed this, but just to make sure, what city requirements must be satisfied before a property can be listed for sale? Was there anything in addition to?
Nothing that's listed for sale. I mean, we don't. There's no permit that says, okay, if you're going to sell your house, you have to, pay a permit to put the, for sale sign up. It's just that we recommend that before you would purchase the house, make sure that your real estate agent, if you're dealing with a closing attorney or whatever, closing agency, make sure they get the lien letter
Mhm.
because you want to know when you buy that property, you want to make sure that all the liens are taken care of. And usually at closing time, we've had that many a time that somebody might have a $1,000 past garbage bill.
Mhm.
Well, at closing, they'll take that out of the proceeds that are going to the seller
Mhm.
to saying, okay, you're buying this house for 50,000. Uh, you know, Instead of giving the seller 40, he's going to get 49,000. We'll
Mhm.
get that thousand, or it could be sewage,
Yeah.
taxes, whatever. That way, you're getting it free. You don't have to worry about any free and clear of all liens or
Right.
anything, because like I said, any liens go with the property, not the property owner.
Mhm.
And that's why we say, people think that, oh, we're getting one over that we didn't have to pay for a lien letter.
It's still good.
You may pay in the end a lot
Right.
more than the $50 fee that for that. So
Well, how
yeah.
about those code violations? Does any of those affect the ability to even list the property?
It doesn't affect it to list the property. It could affect you occupying the property.
Okay.
And we have had many real estate agents and individuals ask us, and we'll tell you if they'll say, are there any open code violations on
Mhm.
123 Park Avenue? And George will say, no, there aren't, or yes, there are.
Mhm.
And that's why he would do the occupants inspection,
Mhm.
beforehand. So it's not anything code violation that you can't list it, but before you can occupy it. And that's why, again, like with the lien letter, ask us, are there any code violations, any open, permits or whatever, because then okay, there's no code violations. Now, when George does his occupancy, he might find a little thing here and there, like
Right.
smoke detectors are required. Well, that's safety for you.
Right.
So, he might tell you that, but it doesn't impede you listing the property, but occupying it would.
And then you guys also require a list of what George checks for too. The code enforcer does too.
Oh yeah, no, he
Yeah.
goes. He has a big
Yeah.
checklist that
But it's open to the public
that
too,
he
right?
looks
Yeah.
outside and inside. Whether it's the roof, the gutters, siding, then on the inside. Just to make sure that he has a list that he checks off. Yes, 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 no. And then, like I said, if there are any things, he will send a letter saying, before you can occupy the house. Now, like I said, if you want to buy the house as is, that you think, I know there's some problems. If you get that affidavit from the buyer that says, okay, you know, I won't occupy it until it's brought to code. Okay, then, like I said, yeah, George will work with you to say, okay, here's what you need to bring it to code.
And is that like a temporary occupancy permit? Okay.
No, you
Issue.
can't occupy it until it's the code.
Okay.
But
Until
it's
it's
you
code.
understand that, we don't want you to say, well, I just thought I was buying it as is. I thought I could know,
Okay.
you know,
No.
that's why, we want the occupancy and what's we request the lien letter. Because usually, like I said, if you request a lien letter, we don't do it until we get the occupancy application too.
Okay.
They're like together. I
Okay.
mean, we don't do one without the other. So, if somebody asks a lien letter, George knows he has to do an occupancy inspection.
Mhm. And how much are those usually?
They're $50 each for the occupancy and the lien letter. If it's a residential property, for a commercial property, it's 150.
Okay. And then they also require to do a dye test in the area too, right?
That is a requirement of the Clairton Municipal
Yeah.
Authority that, and that again is federal and state law that, you have to go to the municipal authority. They have a listing of plumbers that you can, use to do the dye test. But yeah, that is because that could be an expensive fix
Mm.
because a lot of older homes, especially in Clairton, um, we have a whole lot of combined sewers, which means it's storm sewer and sanitary in one. That your bathroom goes into the sewer, and so does your downspouts and that.
Mm.
And that's what the feds have been trying to over the years separate,
Mhm.
because especially when you get these heavy rains, it it floods the sewage treatment plant. They can't handle all that volume of water
Right.
when most of it's storm water anyhow.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, when you have a situation like that, the raw sewage just floats into the river, which
Mhm.
you can't have that.
Right. Right.
That's why, like right now, the Clairton Municipal Authority is undergoing a multi-million-dollar expansion
Mm.
just to be able to handle it.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, the dye test is something that's very important, but that's through the municipal authority.
Okay. Um, how does zoning impact a property's ability to be marked or sold?
It depends, like I said, what you want to do with it. And the zoning ordinances can change from years to year. The last time the zoning ordinance was amended here was in 2014. But how it can affect your property is, like I said, there are certain uses allowed in certain zoning districts. Like in an R1, which is a single family residential, you can't have a lot of businesses in there. Okay, it's not permitted. That's not something that you can go to the zoning hearing board. And it's how you would buy a property. For example, there's a church up on Thompson Avenue.
Mhm.
Okay, it's in an R1 zoning district.
Yes. Right.
It's no longer a church. There's a lot that you can't do in that building now. If somebody came in and said, "Well, I want to operate a business out of here," you can't do it.
Why can't you change that? Why is it?
Well, because like I said, in an R1, you can't just spot zone one piece of property. Now, you could change in an R1 zoning district. You could say, okay, let's say in that church, for example, they wanted to just put a bunch of offices,
Mhm.
and some retail stores or
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, it's because it's a big facility. You can't do that right now. You can't rezone just that parcel into like for commercial
Mhm.
because it's surrounded by R1.
Mhm.
Okay. You can change the zoning ordinance that
Mhm.
says, okay, in an R1, we will permit um, offices and retail business. But that means anywhere in the city, you can put a business or offices in an R1 zoning district. It's not just that building. It applies to, the whole city.
Mm.
So that's why, councils are very reluctant sometimes to say, oh, yeah, we'll just change the zoning so you can do it. Because it may work there that you think,
Yeah.
okay, it's not going to disturb the neighborhood that much. But what are you going to do if somebody in a house right in the middle of a housing complex says, oh, I want to put a store in here?
Mhm.
It's going to, that it's not what the neighborhood is for. That's why you have zoning ordinances.
Oh, okay.
So it can affect it as to, what's the use going to be? Can you do it in that zoning district? And especially let's say you have a car dealership, in a zoning district, and then they close for a year.
Mhm.
Okay, it's out of business. Somebody comes in and says, and let's say the zoning ordinance now says you can't have a car dealership there. The
Right.
ordinance changed. If you came in and said, well, I want to open another car dealership here, used to be one,
Yeah.
can't do it.
Mm.
Okay, the car dealership that was there before was grandfathered in.
Mm.
You can't say, okay, we changed the zoning, so you have to close. No, you get to operate, but if you close, the business ceases.
Now, can you mention that grandfathered in? How does that work?
When we have the zoning ordinance, if it says, for example, you can't have a boarding house with 10 rooms in an R1 single family residential zone, that's what the new ordinance would say. The old zoning ordinance said you could.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you operate, your boarding house, 10 rooms. Zoning ordinance changes. Okay, you're allowed to continue operation. You're grandfathered in because you existed before the zoning ordinance changed. Okay, so you're
Is that
allowed.
something that you have to apply to do or it
No,
automatic?
no, no.
Okay.
You're automatically
Okay.
allowed to do it. But if you were to close your business, you say, I'm going to close my business, and you're closed for 2 years. The building's empty, nobody in it. Nobody has touched the building for 2 years. And then all of a sudden you say, well, I want to reopen my boarding house. The new zoning ordinance says you can't have it in R1. You could not open it because you passed that year that it was vacant. So uh,
So within that year, if you sold it to somebody else, that can still be grandfathered in.
that
Okay.
could be
Oh,
grandfathered
okay.
in. So that's why, like I said, the zoning can change. Um, I think since they had the first zoning ordinance here, they've had about 5 or 6 overall changes. Sometimes you can change one little thing in a zoning district, but you have to be careful because people might say, "Well, you're just changing it for me, and it doesn't bother anybody here."
Yeah.
But you can do it anywhere in the city in that zoning district, and that's what you have to be careful because that's what zoning is, so that you don't have, house, store, house,
Yeah.
car repair shop, house. That's what zoning is for in any
Yeah.
municipality.
And
So.
some of them do have that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that option of
Like I said, that's, it's however you write the zoning
okay.
ordinance. And that's up to, the city council's the one here that, they passed the zoning ordinance. And like I said, in 14, we went through it was about a year and a half process to look at the whole city and what are the uses. Because when you look at our zoning ordinance, I mean, it goes on, for, there's pages of, different uses and whether it's permitted or not. And then with each use, there might be requirements that you have to have.
Mm.
That if you're going to have a business, for example, and if it's abuts a residential area, you might have to have a buffer zone. Some trees, fence, whatever that the residents don't see your business,
Oh, okay.
operating. So, because like I said, everything, the whole city is zoned, and every zoning ordinance abuts against another one. So.
Well, how about with in the residential zoning where manufactured homes?
They're permitted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're permitted. I mean, and there's a lot of manufactured homes these days that, manufactured used to be, oh, they pull a trailer up.
Yeah.
Well, now, they bring these, modular homes
Mm-hmm.
in that they just, come in, bolt them together.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot that I've seen that, on the outside, you can't tell
Right.
because they put brick just, for the aesthetics or siding or whatever. So it's not the old, long trailer that you used to see trailer parks that, they look
Yeah.
just like a regular house. And, but yeah, they are permitted
Mm.
in the R1 or R2.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you're not going to put one in the middle of St. Clair Avenue, for example.
Yeah.
That's because it's not zoned for that.
Say if it was a business. Some of them use them as a business.
If it's a business, and then it's the building, because there's building code requirements to say, okay, if you want to have this business, um, you have to have these 10 things.
Oh, okay.
If you're a big business, and it might say that, depending on the use, and this comes from the state, there's a
Mm-hmm.
uniform construction code that's a state law that says, okay, like for example, if you want to say we want to have a big a big, hall to rent out
Mhm.
and everything. If you go over 99 people as capacity,
Mhm.
you have to have it sprinkled,
Mhm.
have a sprinkler system.
Mhm.
So there's different requirements based on what you want to do and how big you want to go.
Yeah.
That if you said, well, I want to be able to have 400 people in here, that's how big it's going to be. Well, they're going to tell you how many restrooms you have to have, how many stalls you have to
Mhm.
have, how many
Okay.
sinks you have to have, what handicapped access,
Right.
to and from, not just one, but you have to have two so that
Mhm.
if that main handicapped entrance is damaged somehow, they can get out another way.
Right.
So, like I said, there's building codes that are going to impact in addition to the zoning.
Okay. Now, how can buyers verify that past renovations were properly permitted?
You can check with our code enforcement. I
Okay.
mean, if you came in and said, look, I'm going to be purchasing, um, 123 Park Avenue, can you tell me, were there any past renovations, code violations or anything? George, if there were any, he can certainly look it up and tell you that, yeah, they did some renovations back in this year. This is what they did. Uh, they had code violations, but they were resolved so that okay, fine, we're getting a nice structure.
Okay. Does the city provide public access to this permit and zoning records?
It's not something that you can go online and look. Uh, if you came in and said, "I want to know about this contractor or this," what has this contractor ever done or whatever, that's not public information.
Mhm.
I mean, if you have a particular piece of property that you're interested in, they can tell you, but we don't have it that you can go online, for example, and
Mhm.
look up any property and see, what was
Mhm.
done, what code violations. That's not available to the public
Okay.
just by going on. Like
Okay.
on the county, you can go on their real estate
Right.
and you can see, who the owner is,
Mhm.
whether they paid their taxes, but it's limited. I
Right.
mean, but here, if you ask about a particular property, we can tell you, but there's no just general access that you can sit and look up any property. That
Mhm.
doesn't exist.
Okay. Um, and we talked about what type of municipal liens can be placed on a property, like unpaid taxes, utilities, code violations.
It can be code, taxes, garbage, sewage. Uh, if we have demolished a building, and we've done this, if we've demolished a building, um, we try to get the owner, we can put a lien on the property for the demolition cost.
Mm.
Um, what we also have the ability to do, and we've done it, and this is something that the state actually did that was good.
Mhm.
Uh, let's say you own a piece of property in Clairton, but you've abandoned it. It's an old building, you don't care.
Mm.
And we've notified you because you live in Upper St. Clair.
Mhm.
Uh, and we've notified you and you ignore it. You're not going to do it. So we tear the building down, it costs us $20,000. We send you the bill, you ignore it.
Mhm.
We can put a lien on your property in Upper St. Clair
Mm.
for that 20,000.
Oh, okay.
Or and we've never done we've act it's called Act 90. We have threatened people with that, but usually they come and they end up paying. We've never done this, but the law permits us, it would be extreme. We can say, well, you have a nice boat there. We're going to sell that boat to pay off this lien.
Mm.
Uh, the law permits that, but we've never done it. And
Oh, okay.
like I said, once people get the notice, we had one guy that we notified him of his building. He said, well, I want to fix it, and
Yeah.
never did it. We said, look, it's starting to fall down. I mean, the roof fell in, so it's not going to be fixed. Well, we need you to demolish. I will. Never did, so we did it because it was right down on State
Right.
Street. It's a safety issue. We did it. We sent him the bill for like $15,000,
Mhm.
just strict demolition, and said, you have to, oh, I will, I will, I will, I will. Never paid it. So we said, look, we filed with the court. And so he called and he said, this was on a Friday. The court hearing was on Tuesday. He said, well, what can I do I said, well, you can, pay it. Well, how much? I said,
Yeah.
$15,000. what if I don't? I said, well, we will go to court on Tuesday and we will present the judge with the $15,000 lien plus the attorney's time plus my time and everything else, which will take it to probably about $20,000.
Mhm.
Monday, I had a check for
Oh,
$15,000. So,
okay.
like I said, that's, all we do is ask people to take care of it.
Right.
I mean, when you were here, if you rented out that building, or you used it for, you were making money,
Mhm.
but if you abandon it, like I said, it's a safety hazard.
Right.
And we don't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a building right over on St. Clair now, the old Bluebird restaurant.
Mhm.
If you look in the 500 block, the facade, the front started to fall down.
Mhm.
Okay, the building, the roof is caved in. So once the roof goes, it's a matter of time before the walls go.
Yeah.
And kids walk that route. So
Yeah.
you think all we do is ask you to take care of it. Um, so like I said, but we can put a lien on if we demolish it. That if the property is valuable, then we can say to whoever buys it, well, there's a lien for $15,000. If you found the owner,
Yeah.
let us know.
Okay.
We'll get in touch with them and tell them. But we can place that lien if we want.
And they're aware of the lien on their property too.
Oh
Yeah.
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 Well, like I said, if somebody does a title search, um, and like I said, when we had our tax sale, we did a title search on all the properties, and they go way back.
Mm.
I mean, we had some federal liens that when I contacted to say, look, this was a lien placed back in 1930
Mhm.
for like $3,000. I said it's got to be paid off by now. We dealt with our state rep at the time. It was Mike Doyle, and he said that agency ceased to exist like 30 years ago. But
Yeah.
they never took it off. And we found out that, and this is what I found out, that a lot of banks, they have a mortgage on
Mhm.
a house.
Yeah.
The mortgage is paid off. The people paid off the mortgage, but the bank never went and removed the lien on the
Oh.
property. And I found out that banks are not too cooperative.
Mm.
You call them and say, look, we have a thing here that says PNC has this lien on this
Yeah.
property. Can you tell me if it was paid off? No. No, it wasn't paid off. No, I can't tell you. I said, but I'm just trying. I told them why. And we ended up going to court because, we told the judge, we said, look, we're trying to get this cleaned up, but
Yeah.
they don't cooperate. And so he had an order. All liens are considered satisfied. And a
Oh.
lot of them were satisfied. They just
Right. They
never
did.
went and took it off the books. So, like I said, if you do a title search, and most people do,
Yeah.
or if you're going to finance it, most banks require it,
Right.
or they will do it,
Right.
because just to make sure. And like I said, there's some interesting things we found on title searches.
Right. I bet. Well, how does that look, that relationship that communication between you and title companies when they are with the
Like I said, we deal with them. Like I said, a lot of title companies are the ones that request the lien letters.
Mhm.
We'll get the request from them, not
Mhm.
the individual purchasing the property. So, like I said, whether it's a real estate company, title company, a bank, individual, we'll work with anybody. Because like I said, we want to see the property continue to be used.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want people to think, oh, this is a hassle, so I'm just going to abandon the property. I
Right.
mean, we'd prefer to have somebody obviously occupy a house, keep it up to date, pay the taxes.
Mhm.
Uh, so we'll work with anybody.
Well, how's
Yeah.
that process? How's that behind the scenes look for obtaining municipal lien letters with the title company? How does that look when they request it?
It would just be like an individual. If we get the request,
Mhm.
like I said, if all the forms are there, the lien letter request, the occupancy permit, and the fee, like I said, within a day or two, we can turn it around from our office.
Okay.
And we will tell them, look, you have to contact Jordan Tax for county. You
Mhm.
have to contact, Andrews and Price for the school.
Mhm.
Contact the municipal authority. So we have a listing that we will tell people, look, here's other ones you want to check with.
Mm.
before you close on it, just to
Okay.
make sure. Don't think that, if the city says this, that, oh, that's everything.
Right.
We're just the city. The school's a separate entity. The county's a separate entity. The municipal authority is a separate entity. So you want to check with all of them, but we have the list of who they are, what their contact is, and we tell them, contact these people also.
Mm.
Like I said, whether it's an individual, bank, title company, real estate company, whoever, and a lot of them know because it's not their first lien letter request or
Yeah.
whatever, but we still tell them.
Is there some municipalities that do it together or they're always separated?
I'm not aware of any that have done. I've never worked with a multi. The only way you would have maybe something like that is if, and I can't even think of a joint service that you would have that you would split the revenue that you think, okay, if the people didn't pay it, we would lien it.
Mm.
Uh, I know there's a lot of like the Clareton Municipal Authority. They serve not only Clareton, but they reach as far as Peters Township,
Mm.
with treating
Yeah.
their sewage, not the whole township, but some. And along the way, Pleasant Hills, Jefferson, there's some of that all goes to the Clareton Municipal Authority. So, and how they, do it, like, you know, Clareton Municipal Authority bills individuals here in Clareton. They send you an individual bill to your house or business. The upstream communities, the Clareton Municipal Authority sends them a bill because they know how much the flow is. So they might send a bill to the Peters Township Municipal Authority for $50,000 for
Mhm.
this month. It's up to that authority to then send out bills to whoever their customers are.
Oh,
But like I said, there's no joint municipal programs projects or services now that I can think of that, there would be a lien place that two
okay.
municipalities share it.
Now
You
what?
have police departments that, they have not merged, but they go together some, but there's no lienable costs there that I can think of.
Now can you break down a little bit? I mean, this was something that I just curious, but you know how we have the Jefferson Hills that are closing and aired to us, and then they have a city, Clareton is listed as their city, but their area is Jefferson Hills. How does that kind of work with that?
Well, that's just the zip code. I mean, a
Okay.
lot that confuses a lot of people because and they see, you live in Jefferson Hills, but it goes Clareton, PA
Mm.
15025. We get people that, call us for a property in Jefferson
Mm-hmm.
because, and because they, and it may be people, not the residents as much because they know where they obviously live, but you get a bank or a real estate
Yeah.
company, they see Clareton and they think, oh, it's Clareton, so I'll call
Yeah.
the city of Clareton offices to see, what's the situation, and we can look it up. That, and we know, okay, we don't have a street like that. They could look it up on the county website because if you look at the county real estate website, it tells you what the municipality is,
Mm.
and then we can say, look, you're in Jefferson Hills, or and here's who you want to call in Jefferson. Give them the number for the Jefferson Hillsborough building.
Oh, okay. So there's no taxes being paid over
No,
the
no,
okay.
that's just the post office and the zip code
Okay, that's just
that with the I don't know how that was long before I ever got here, how they got Clareton, but
okay.
that's just the zip code for the post office, but it has nothing to do with municipal operations.
Oh, okay. Okay. What is and we mentioned about the typical turnaround for lien requests. How often do errors occur in lien reporting and how are they resolved?
We don't have too much, I mean, too
Okay.
many errors because, like I said, all of our records are computerized, so they can pull up, um, you know, a a property and we can print it out,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, okay, I'm not looking at the screen saying, okay, that's $351 and I write 315 instead of 351. I mean, we print it out and we attach that to it
Right.
so that you see that. So we don't have too many errors with that. If we were to miss something, like I said, if there was something that we discovered after the fact. we don't go back to the people after they've closed and say, "Hey, we found another $200 here. You owe us." We would just basically we would write that off. I mean, we're not going to go back to the people. If we made the mistake, the city eats that.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to go back to the people and say, "Well, you owe us another 200," because a lot of that is, like I said, with the closing companies.
Mhm.
They have, okay, what is due buyer, what's due seller, and you think if there's a municipal lien or if you owe, like a bank loan, if you have a bank loan, the
Yeah.
bank's going to get their money out of closing. So, yeah, we're not going to put that on the buyer after the fact.
Right.
That won't happen.
Right. And if there's something to miss too, that's why they get the title insurance.
Hmm.
Um,
Or if we were to make a mistake, let's say for some reason, you know, we put it into the computer wrong. Instead of 350 or 351, we put 315. If we were to discover that later, that's us. So that's on us, not the buyer.
that's fine, okay. Now, what are the most common reasons real estate closings are delayed due to city related issues?
One could be, again, if you don't have the forms, we get lien letter requests, but no occupancy permit. Okay,
Mm,
or we get the occupancy permit, but no lien letter requests. Or we get the forms, but no fee. Or like I said, that if there are, if we know there's code violations, that can hold up a sale because people might say, well, no, I want the house done before.
mhm,
I know when we sold our forest house in Forest Hills, we sold it in December. And when they did not only the house inspection, but when the municipality came out, and this is when I was the manager there,
mhm.
so it's like, okay, yeah, I know you. I signed your paycheck.
Yeah.
Uh, in the middle of December, I was up painting the gutter on one side of the house because they said, "Oh, that needs to be painted
Mm.
before." you know so it's little things like that, but like I said, it would be, if the forms are not there or they're not filled out properly,
Mm,
or the fee, or if there's some known code violations, that could hold up a sale.
okay.
And like I said, most real estate agents, they've dealt with the city before.
Mhm,
um, it's basically the biggest ones are the out of town, out of state ones
mhm.
that they don't know, or they'll send 25 bucks, and you think, well, it says 50,
Yeah.
and that's on them, but that could delay it. But we will still do the report. But like I said, if you're missing the fee, the report's done as soon as you get it. We can email it or we'll fax it to you,
Yeah.
or if you want to pick it up, whatever your thing is, we'll get it out to you quickly.
Okay.
But that can hold it up, just just basically the paperwork.
Okay. Very cool. Um, how does the city ensure transparency for buyers regarding property issues?
Like I said, any code violations, if somebody wanted to, you just talk with George. He'll tell you if there's any code violations, open code violations. Like I said, you request a lien letter, we're gonna tell you what's there. We're not, like I said, we're not gonna say, well, don't tell them, let's wait.
Mhm,
Like I said, if we make the mistake, that's on us. So and we're a business, basically. We want to get what's owed us. If there's $2,000 in back garbage, we don't want to say there's 1,500.
right.
So like I said, we want to make sure our records are good. And like I said, when they're requested, we're going to release the information.
Yeah.
And like I said, George is very open. um, you know if there were no code violations, he has easy day in his job.
Yeah.
But
And even if there are code violations too, as long as there's that communication with the buyer and George, yeah, you can work through
yeah,
that.
and
Yeah.
like I said, if we get a few that they'll sign that affidavit that, okay, I understand there's code violations, I'm still going to buy it, but I won't occupy it until they're taken care of. And George, you can set up the inspections. It's not like, well, I only do them on Tuesdays.
Hmm.
I mean, if you say, look, I'm going to be done Friday, then he'll schedule it for Friday. He's very flexible.
Yeah.
That because he wants to get it done.
Right.
Get it done, get you in there, Because if you're a buyer, and if let's say if it's your first, you're anxious. You
Yeah.
want to get in and get settled because that's your home now.
Right.
So, and he wants to get you in there as quickly as we can.
Right. Okay. Um, how would you describe the role of the city building to someone new to the community?
Basically, if you want to know anything about the city,
Mhm.
you want to come to City Hall and basically to the Finance Administration Office because that's where the tax bills come out of,
Mhm.
garbage bills come out of there. If you want to get a pool pass in the summertime, you get it in that
Mhm.
finance office. Lien letter and occupancy requests go to the finance office.
Mhm.
They'll then pass on the occupancy to George. If you want a police report, you pay for it in the finance office. Then the police, will give you the report.
Mhm.
Um, any information on any recreational program, any information about the city, you can get in the finance administration office.
Mhm.
So that's where you want to go if you have a question just about when's my recycling.
Mhm.
They have the recycling calendars there that they can give you. So if you call and you say, what's the number for code enforcement? They have that. The police department.
Mhm.
When's my garbage get picked up? I live on this street.
Mhm.
Gets picked up on Tuesdays. Put it out Monday night.
Mhm.
Like I said, any information about the city, that's where you want to go
Okay.
because one, they're in their offices Monday through Friday from 9 to 4. The police, people will come to the police department, knock on the door, and they'll come down. Police aren't there. I need to see a policeman. Well, the police are out patrolling.
Mhm.
We don't have the staff to put a secretary there that can, say, okay, what do you need? Okay. If you need a police officer, let's say it's not a 911 emergency, but you want to report something, they can call the dispatch center and say, we need a police officer back at the police station.
Mhm.
They'll contact the police. Police will come back and assist you. Like I said, George is in and out.
Mhm.
People come and say, "Where's George?" Well, he's not sitting in his office all day.
Yeah.
He's out doing inspections.
Mhm.
Because he doesn't just do housing inspections, but he's the code. So, in the summertime, we get a lot of complaints. This yard has high weeds and grass.
Mhm.
This they got garbage all over the place. So he's out enforcing that also.
Mhm.
He sends you a code violation or a violation for high grass, weeds, garbage, or whatever. You ignore it, he has to file with the magistrate. So he has magistrate hearings. So
Mhm.
he's not in. But if you come to the finance office, they can say, okay, we'll take your name and number, we'll give it to George, or here's his number if you want to call him, leave him
Yeah.
a message. Here's his email.
Mhm.
You can email him. So like I said, if the city hall, that's the finance office is where you want to go if you have any questions, because like I said, we have great people down there,
Mhm.
and Becky has been there 28 years, so she knows
Mhm.
most people in the city, and like I said, she knows how the city operates, that she can get you in the right direction. I mean, the Clareton School District goes by Clareton City School District,
Mhm.
so everybody thinks, oh, Clareton City, I have a question about the school. Clareton, okay, call the city hall.
Mhm.
I mean, we get calls about, the school. What's the school doing this? Well, you have to call the school. We
Yeah.
don't know that. Um, we had one call which was funny that I actually answered once, and it was a question about the school. And I said, well, you'll have to call the school. Why don't you call the school and ask them? Here's the number. Well, I don't want to bother them. You know, you think, well, if you want the answer, you got to
Yeah, you gotta
bug
talk.
them. But like I said, that they're here, and like I said, they know the city. I mean, they can direct you. People come in. I have to pay my sewage bill. Well, here's how you get to the sewage
Right.
authority. I had to get a dye test done. Well, contact the sewage authority.
Mhm.
Um, can I pay my school taxes here? No, you have to go here to pay them. They can. They not only know the city operations, but because they've been here, they know
Mhm.
if there's a question where they can send you in the right direction.
Oh, okay.
They may not know the answer, but call this number and you'll get your answer that you need.
Yeah.
So they try and help people as much as they can.
Yeah. And when you mentioned the taxes real quick, when people do purchase property here, or anywhere, in a community, they're paying what taxes?
The real estate tax, and we have a two-tier, which you don't find in a lot of municipalities where we have a millage rate just on the land
Mm-hmm.
and a millage rate on the building.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Most municipalities, at least the three that I've been in, they just have one rate.
Mm-hmm.
But here, our rate is like on the land, it's 35 mils.
Mm-hmm.
On the buildings, it's 5 mils. And when you look, if you go onto the county website, the Allegheny County Real Estate website, it'll show you what the value of your land is, what
Mm-hmm.
they assess it at, and what they assess your house at. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we get our information from the county, because only the county is allowed to assess properties.
Mm-hmm.
We can't go out as a municipality and say, well, we think your house is worth, the county says it's worth 30,000. We think it's worth 100. No, we can't do that. Only the county can assess properties. But we get our information from the county for tax purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So does the school district. And the school district also has the two-tier tax on buildings, tax on land. So even if you have a vacant lot, you're taxed on it. But yeah, and not too many municipalities have the two-tier. It's usually just one tax rate, but
But it's still taxing on the land and the buildings. It's
land
just
and the
one. Okay.
buildings, yes,
Okay.
you get both. And like I said, you're paying more on the land,
Yeah.
so that like I say, if you have a vacant lot, you are paying taxes on it. It's
Okay.
not like, well, there's no house, why shouldn't I pay taxes?
Now, does the two tiers make it cheaper or make any difference?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
like I said, because even when we report to the state at the beginning of the year, we tell them what our assessed value is on land, buildings, what the tax rate is, and they come up with one rate.
Mm.
It automatically calculates it. I don't even have to.
Mm.
So it doesn't really make any difference. It's just that, like I said, that you're paying more on the land, and with the vacant lots that we have, it helps the municipality.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
we're still getting a good tax rate on that land.
Okay. If it wasn't two tier, you wouldn't do that. Get that?
We would, but you'd figure like our two-tier right now, like I said, it's 35 on the land and
Mm-hmm.
5 on the buildings. According to the state, and the assessed value can change each year, but according to the state, our tax rate, if we had a single rate, would be 11 mils.
Mm.
So all we would do is saying, okay, if your land is worth, let's say 50 and your building's worth 50. Right now you would take, you would pay 5 mils on 150 and then another 35 mils on the land value for 50. If it was together, we would say, well, it's worth 100,000 at 11 mils.
Mm.
So there's no great advantage,
Okay.
but there's no disadvantage either.
Now, how's it sometimes too when they purchase a home too? Sometimes they can expect maybe the taxes to go up, possibly.
It could,
Okay.
if the county comes out and reassesses it.
Okay.
Because, like I said, only the county can assess properties. That's law. That's not, our choice. What the county could do is, let's say that, your house and land were, just use single value, was, according to the county, worth $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's been that way for years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Uh, it's sold, all of a sudden it's sold for 200,000,
Mm-hmm.
the county could look at these and say, well, we're going to come out and reassess some of these properties. It doesn't automatically go up, but they could come out, or the municipality could look and say, whoa, 50,000 to 200. We ought to, let's file an appeal with the county. We can
Oh,
appeal
okay.
your assessment. Now,
Okay.
we have to prove it,
And the school can do that
the
as well.
school can do it, county can do it,
Okay.
city, school, and county can do it. It doesn't happen that often,
Mm.
because, like I said, the last county-wide reassessment that they did here was in the year 2000.
Okay.
But values have certainly increased. I know on our home, when they did the reassessment, um, the value almost doubled.
Mm.
And my wife, are you going to appeal it?
Yeah.
Appeal it? I said, no. She says, why not? It went, from
Mm.
this. I said, it's still less than we paid for the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we overpaid for our house.
Yeah.
I mean, So I said, yeah, and I understood it. I said, no, that's, this house has been that value for 30 years since they built it. Well,
Yeah.
certainly is appreciated in
Right.
value. So I said, no, we're not going to appeal.
Mhm.
Because the thing would be is when they did the county-wide reassessment, there's a state law that says cities, school, and counties can't get more than a 5% bump in revenue.
Mhm.
Because, like I said, if you did reassessed all the properties, let's say in Clairton now,
Mhm.
it was done 26 years ago. Well, they've certainly gone up in value.
Right.
Okay, so let's say that the value of real estate in Clairton went from, and these are just numbers, from uh, 100 million to 200 million.
Mhm.
Okay, if we kept the current tax rates, our real estate revenues would double.
Mhm.
Well, the state law says no, when you do a county-wide reassessment, we can only get a 5% bump.
Mhm.
So instead of going from, let's just say we were collecting $10 million on the 100
Yeah.
million, instead of collecting 20, we can only get a 5% bump.
Oh, okay.
So it protects the homeowner that
Yeah.
if your property doubles in value, your property taxes aren't going to double.
Oh, okay.
They
Understand.
might go up, 5%, but
Okay.
that's realistic.
Yeah. And they do have that Homestead Act too that kind of help with that.
Homestead exemption, if you're
Yeah.
if you're a single family homeowner and you live in your home, I think the county exemption, and that only applies for the county, is $18,000. So if your house, let's say, is valued at 18,000,
Mhm.
you won't pay any county taxes at all.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now the city has an exemption also, but it's based on it was on the sales tax revenue and all that, or not the sales tax. I'm sorry, the when they have the casinos and they
Oh, okay.
sold those and the money they get, because there's money that comes out from that.
Mhm.
But now there is a senior discount that the county has, that if you're under a certain income, it's up to 25% that you can get off your city taxes.
Oh, okay.
But you have to apply to the county.
Mhm.
If you're eligible for the county, you're eligible for us.
Okay.
So that helps some seniors.
Is there any discount for the school?
The school has, like I said, they get the gambling revenue. I'm not sure how it operates, but there's a little relief there.
Oh, okay.
I'm just not sure how that works
Okay.
because they have a separate company that deals with their real estate taxes.
Okay. What are some of the most important services residents may not realize the city building provides?
Uh, well, like I said, we deal with anything with taxes. So if you have a question about taxes, um, like I said, that they don't know. I mean, like I said, if there are questions, like I said, well, all the things we deal with in the summertime, if you need a pool permit, pool pass, you come here. Uh, if you want to rent the shelters that we have in the park or the lodge, in the pavilion down there, which is it's busy every Friday and Saturday during the summer. That you come to the finance office. Um, because I can't think of any services that you think, well, that we don't. Um, like I say, if there's questions, you come to the finance office and they can tell you, whether we have that, or, how it operates, or what the program requirements are. Or, like I said, we can send you in the right direction. If it's a
Yeah.
school or county or municipal authority, or,
Mhm.
whatever, we can send you in the right. So maybe the biggest thing is the information that they have,
Okay.
just the information that, like I said, if it's not a city operation, they can tell you, call these people. They
Yeah.
can answer your questions. So it's more, good directory assistance.
And events that are maybe happening in the community too. They're probably familiar with some of
They would
those too.
have that. I mean, we
Yeah.
do have a website that we try and keep up to date with what we're having. Uh, we have a hearing coming up Monday, for example. Our cable franchise with Comcast is up, so we're having we have renewal on that. Verizon wants to come into the city to provide cable television service.
Mhm.
Okay, they've already been here for the internet and phone, but in order to provide cable television, you have to have a cable television franchise with us.
Mm.
Um, so that's going to be competition for Comcast, which is always good for the consumer.
Okay.
You know, before Comcast basically had a monopoly unless you went, you know, to a streaming service or, you know, with
Mhm.
the dish or whatever. But now we have Verizon. So, you know, you go to our website, you'll see that we have public hearing coming up on anybody that wants to, you know, speak their piece on that. You know, we have some openings in public works
Mm.
in the finance office, you know, that we advertise on our website. You can go there to find out information about pool rental, you know, the park rentals, pool passes, you know, stuff like that. We try and keep it, you know, information that you can go there and look, or at least you know, okay, if you don't see it there, call the finance office.
So that's a good point too when you said about cable or internet and all that. So the city kind of has to approve those companies that come in.
For
Yeah,
cable
for
television, I
cable. Okay.
mean, I wish we get a franchise fee. It's 5%
Hmm.
of the gross. Now, I wish that was on internet service and everything else, but it's only
On
on
cable.
cable
Okay.
television.
Okay.
Um, you know, now if you have like a dish,
Hmm.
there's no requirement. You know,
Hmm.
it's only like I said in this case with Comcast or Xfinity or Verizon, and
Okay.
it's nice that Verizon is coming in because, like I said, that's competition for Comcast.
Right.
Um, yeah, so they're sure there'll be some offers for people,
Yeah.
and it's always good for the consumer when you have competition.
Right.
So
How do you see the role of the city building evolving in the future?
I think it's just going to be like I said that you know with today it's information, you know, with the internet and everything out there that you know it's going to play an important role. That like I said, as we expand, you know, we have a new library going in across the street from the current one, new facility. You know, we hope to have it open in June. You know, there'll be information about that. One of the things that City Council wants to start the process is the development of a recreation center.
Hmm.
You know, that not just a big community center where you can meet, but a recreation center where, you know, you can have kids run around, play football, soccer stuff, but you also have activities or the facilities for all ages, have a walking track
Hmm.
for seniors. I know a lot of seniors like to walk,
Hmm.
to have a walking track that for people. Have stuff, programming for, you know, for toddlers that, you know, for mothers and toddlers that you think as we develop these, you know, how you get access to them, it's going to be important. So that will be through our, you know, city hall that, you know, what we would have here. Because like I said, we want to, you want to provide services to people because the only way they're going to move into your community, because you're in competition with others, is what do you have to offer people? You know, do you have reasonably priced houses?
Hmm.
Is it a safe community? What's the school district like?
Hmm.
Uh, what activities do you have for people? You
Hmm.
know, that, you know, people complain, oh, kids don't have anything to do.
Right.
Well, part of that is if you don't have the facilities.
Hmm.
But, you know, council wants to look at this rec center. They're going to take their time and develop it to say, you know, we want to hold a public hearing
Hmm.
sometime in May to say, okay, what facilities do you want to see in this rec center? And then we want to have an architect design it for us, you know, so that when we go out for grants, uh, the library renovations that we made, okay, it's about $1.2 million.
Hmm.
All of it is funded by grants that we got. We have 4 different grants. We have a state, a federal, county, and the regional asset district has a grant. So we have 4 grants for that we have. So like I said, we want to make the community, make it appealing
Hmm.
because like I said, we're in competition with every other community for residents. And
Mm.
especially in the Mon Valley, it's tough because that's
Yeah.
the older part of the county. You know, and it's probably when you look at the income, probably on the lower side. I
Hmm.
mean, you know, we're certainly not, you know, we can't compete with an Upper St. Clair,
Right.
you know, because of their funding, you know, the services they can provide. That's what attracts people.
Hmm.
So we have to do the best that we can.
Right.
I mean, and that's with the, like I said, developing a rec center. We're putting a new pool liner in the pool this year. The pool is our best asset, and it's one of the best pools around.
Mhm.
It's one of the only pools around.
Yeah.
Uh, but like I said, and we do sell pool passes to non-residents.
Mhm.
So it's how attractive can you make your community? Because that's going to make it easier to for real estate people to say, hey, come to Clairton. Look, the houses are reasonably
Yeah.
priced. You can get a nice house. They've got all these amenities. Their public works is great for plowing snow.
Mhm.
So it's the total package that you put together. And like I said, if people have questions about any of this, City Hall is where you're going to go,
Yeah.
because most people come across that bridge at some time, and you think you see the big building, so
Yeah.
okay, I'll go in there, find out what I need to know.
Right. Yeah. And they're having the summer concerts this year. Summer too. Yeah.
Summer concerts, like
Yeah.
I said, if you want to be a vendor, you come to the finance office to sign up.
Yeah.
So any information about city programs, services, operations,
Come here.
City Hall, and specifically the finance office, that's where you want to come to ask the question.
Now, what is your vision for improving the relationship between the city and its residents?
The communication. I mean, we had a newsletter that we put out, which I was very proud of. Unfortunately, the company that printed it for us and did the mailing ceased operation.
Mm.
So we did find a new company that can, because like I said, we have to like segregate. We don't want to send it to the Jefferson Hills people,
Mhm.
but we did find a company. So we're hoping to get our newsletter back, and running,
Mm.
so that we can, it's not going to be a weekly or monthly. It might be every other month, because there is a cost with it,
Mhm.
to get that out to people. Um, like I said, just getting the word out about what Clairton has to offer, and getting people involved. I mean, and this is the thing that bothers me, and it hurts Clairton. Clairton, with all the problems that we had with Act 47, that you couldn't, take care of roads and demolish as many buildings as you wanted, is, there's no reason to have if you look at some of the places where there's just garbage thrown around, there's no need for that.
Mhm.
I mean, garbage is picked up every week.
Mhm.
We have 55-gallon drums on most every street corner. You think, take pride in your community,
Yeah.
because when people ride through, if they see garbage and that, you think, that's a bad impression you're giving them,
Right.
and you think, that's a problem that doesn't cost the city money.
Right.
I mean, we have cleanup day twice a year. We have one coming up on April 25th, and we have different groups that will go out and they'll just clean up their neighborhood. And you think, why wait just twice a year to do that?
Right.
Or if there's a garbage can, hit the garbage can.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a problem that I see in the city that you think we shouldn't have,
Yeah.
and it's just a bad impression. I mean, we're trying to do our best, like with the demolitions. I mean, I spent 25 years in Green Tree, Forest Hills, and West Mifflin. Did one demolition.
Mm.
That's all.
Yeah.
Since I've been here, we're well over 200.
Mm.
And there's unfortunately more that still need to
Mhm.
come down. Okay. Because that is, that's the image of the city. Nobody's going to want to move in across the street or next door to a house that's falling down.
Right.
I'd rather see a vacant lot, but I think we're dealing with the residents is just, getting that, take pride in your community.
Mhm.
And I think part of the problem there is that probably half this city is rental units.
Mm.
And, like I said, I grew up in Dormont, raised there. Okay. You did everything Dormont.
Yeah.
Okay. That people come in, they might be here for a year, then they leave. So they don't take the pride in the community to
Right.
think, okay, let's go help a cleanup day. Let's keep our neighborhood clean. You get a lot of landlords
Mhm.
that, George is citing them because, they're leaving their properties go.
Mm.
And you think, just take some pride in the community because, like I said, you're going to live here, um, and you want to have it as nice as possible.
Yeah.
So I think with residents, it's just, get involved in your community, and help us out.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, we spent last year almost $50,000 cutting vacant lots
Mm.
because, there's no one
Yeah.
around. Uh, if there's a lot next to you, yeah, maybe a little extra, cut it.
Yeah.
Keep your neighborhood nice. Don't say, well, there's a lot next to me. Somebody's got to cut it.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, it costs money.
Right.
And you think, Clareton, like I said, I think we've been very good with our finances, but they're not unlimited.
Mm.
We are tight.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's just, help the city out. It's your city.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can come to the city council meetings too and learn some stuff too.
We have people that come, some praise us, others, they come up with problems and you think,
Right.
okay, that's fine. Or, to help. I mean, we had a situation, there was a lady who was mugged. I mean, she wasn't hurt seriously, but we actually had people, identify who it was.
Mm.
And usually people didn't want to get involved.
Yeah.
And, one of our councilmen at the last meeting, and it was great, he said, it's great to see people do that.
Mm.
And you think, we need more of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and we understand that, it's tough that, that if you come forth and testify these days,
Yeah.
you could be the next victim. But, you know, the police, something happens and they say, how come the police haven't caught anybody?
Yeah.
They don't know who it is.
Right.
I mean, or, you see a vision on a camera and the best thing you can say is, well, it's human because it's on two legs, but we can't tell if it's male, female, black, white,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
old, young.
Yeah.
And you can't just say, well, they look to be about 5'10". Go arrest every person that's 5'10".
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough, but if people get involved, I mean, even anonymously.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a system years ago that we paid for. That was 411.
Mm.
And what it was, you could sign up for it with your cell phone,
Mm-hmm.
and you could tell the police, if you saw something and you said, oh, that's Billy Smith that did that.
Yeah.
You could anonymously, let the police know because the police didn't know who it was coming from.
Yeah.
Because it was routed to a company, and they would never release it. But the police would get the message that Billy Smith was the person who, robbed that store or did this to that person or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it was also vice versa.
Right.
If something happened, the police could send out a message saying, hey, there was a shooting on Vankirk,
Right.
the 500 block, be careful. If you hear, see anything, let us know. It was free. Okay. Everybody in this town has at least one cell phone.
Right.
So you figure with the last census, there's at least 6,181 cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
We had 100 people sign up.
Mm.
That was it.
Mm.
And you think, we have people that said, well, if there's a disaster, how are you going to notify people? You don't have anything to notify people.
Yeah.
This was a system we had.
Mm.
That, for example, when there was the explosion down at the U.S. Steel mill,
Yeah.
if you were on that system, we could have said there was an explosion at the mill. There was a release of some gas, so stay inside, or the air is clean.
Right.
You don't have to worry. Avoid State Street because you weren't getting past Maple and St. Clair. Avoid this. You can let people know.
Right.
What the situation is, but it's like, well, what do you want us to do? We can't go door to door.
Yeah.
I mean, that would take forever. But if people were on that system, if there was a disaster that was, let's say, affected most of the city, we could say, avoid St. Clair, exit town via Desiderio, Worthington, whatever, go that way.
Right.
But like I said, I don't know if it's just a distrust that people, don't believe that, oh, it's going to be anonymous. But like I said, the police aren't everywhere.
Yeah.
And if people don't help, there's nothing they can do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that they don't want to,
Right.
obviously,
Yeah.
police would love to catch every bad guy. That would be a feather in their cap.
Yeah,
But if they don't know who it is,
they can't.
or like I said, if someone says, "I think it was Billy Smith," well,
Yeah,
if you're not willing to testify, and then they're going to ask you in court, "Well, how do you know?"
yeah,
Well, I know he's a bad kid.
yeah. You have to really.
Well, I mean, and even when there's cameras, I mean, we put cameras on Miller Avenue going up. The medicine shop was robbed about 2 3 years ago,
Hmm.
and we had a camera there.
Yeah.
Okay, it was a very clear picture, but not all crooks are stupid. The guy had a hoodie on, he had it pulled, so
Hmm.
you couldn't see his face.
Yeah.
All you could tell was probably a male, very skinny.
Hmm.
He was wearing a light blue hoodie.
Hmm. It's not much.
Now you can't say, well, go arrest anybody with a light blue hoodie,
Yeah.
because even, if there was something to, unless you can see the face, the DA's office usually won't prosecute.
Right.
They want definitive facial recognition,
Yeah.
and that's tough, no matter what. I mean, it's very tough. But like I said, and the fire department right now is trying that program again, that you
Hmm.
can sign up.
Yeah.
The last time they said we have less than 100 people that signed up,
Hmm.
and they're not going to pay for it another year
If it's nobody.
if people don't do it. So it's like it said, look, help us to help you.
Yeah.
The police, we're not monitoring your cell phone. I mean, but I think there's a distrust there. There's a distrust of the government,
Yeah.
and I jokingly place that on the feds. It's nobody. I don't even trust the federal government. They're just,
Yeah.
But that's something we have to deal with.
Yeah.
So it's, try and get the communication out to people, get them to say, look, we're just
Yeah.
trying to help you.
Yeah.
We're not trying to spy on you. We have too much to do.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Just help us out. And then before I do close, one thing I wanted to touch on when you had mentioned the Act 47, and you had mentioned that due to us being in under that for so long, that didn't allow for us to make improvements or have, is that what you mean?
well, they didn't have the money to do it.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, you can have the greatest plans in the world, but if
Yeah.
you don't have the money, doesn't matter.
Okay.
And that was just the problem, is that the city just didn't have the money to do it. The finance administration office used to have 9 full-time people going
Hmm.
way back.
Hmm.
There's 2 of us now,
Hmm.
2 full-time people, myself and my secretary. We have a part-time, clerk also that works, 30 hours or 15 hours a week,
Oh,
15. But, and like I said, all the work's still getting done. We've
yeah.
changed the way we do some things,
Hmm.
but they didn't have the money to do it.
Because they weren't eligible for different things. Is
We're
that
not,
why?
well, they were getting grants if they could, but some grants are matching.
Oh,
That,
okay.
okay, we'll give you 70% of the project. You have to come up with the rest. And like I said, there was just things that they couldn't do. Big things, road paving, demolitions. I know that I started here in April of 2011, and I know they said at the end of 2010 they basically ran out of money in November.
Mm.
That bills for late November and December weren't paid till the following year, when they started getting some tax money or garbage in that. Uh,
So
now
how? So
now
how?
we're
Oh,
now we're good. We don't
okay.
we don't run out of money. I mean, we're able to pay our bills, but they just didn't have the funds to do stuff.
Okay. And that's why they had to be under the Act 47. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
they were just getting to where, like I said, with the mills, the mill used to, be operating 24/7. Now they
Yeah.
only have like 2 shifts.
Okay.
And if you look at St. Clair, Miller, State Street, Clarendon in its heyday, there were businesses up and
Right.
down all of those. You look at it now, and there's very few businesses.
Right.
Okay, a lot of those buildings are abandoned. They're not paying taxes.
Hmm.
There is a mercantile business privilege tax. If you're not operating a business, we're not getting the tax revenue, obviously. So they lost a lot of tax revenue. They lost a lot of residents. Residents pay the earned income tax.
Mm.
Well, when you're not working or you move out of town, obviously we're not getting, the earned income.
Yeah.
So their revenues went way down, but a lot of your expenses, you can't say, well, we're only going to plow half the streets. You still have to plow all the streets.
Mhm.
The police, you can't say we have one police officer in town,
Yeah.
so they uh, they just hit a bad financial back in the late 80s, and it unfortunately just kept going.
Oh, okay.
It was almost 28 years before they came out of it.
Yeah.
It was a proud day, but like I said, it wasn't easy getting there.
Yeah. Mm. Well, Howard, with all that, since my podcast is seeking wisdom through real estate, what's a piece of wisdom that you'd like to give our viewers today?
With real estate, uh, I'd say move to Clairton. That's one thing. I mean,
Mhm.
there are a lot of affordable houses here.
Yeah.
I mean, that if you're looking for a nice house, there are a lot of nice houses in this town
Mhm.
that are
Yeah.
that are very strong. They're built strong.
Mhm.
Like I said, that. But when you're going to do that, like I said, with the real estate, work with a real estate agent or closing agent,
Mhm.
get the lien letters because we don't want you to have surprises after you buy it.
Yeah.
That's no good. I mean, if you didn't incur the bill, you shouldn't have to pay it.
Right.
But unfortunately, taxes, garbage, any liens go with the property. So be vigilant,
Yeah.
when you part. But like I said, Clairton, we're trying to improve it.
Yeah.
And like I said, with the pool, with what we hope to have the rec center, there'll be stuff that people can say it is nice to move there
Yeah.
because it is close to everything.
Mm.
I mean, you're not far from Pittsburgh.
Right.
The new 43, you
Mhm.
can get on that right down in Large.
Mhm.
So it's not just for residents, but for businesses also.
Mhm.
There is property on State Street. If you're a business, Miller and St. Clair have,
Mhm.
plenty of vacant buildings. They're still good.
Yeah.
Do you think that, we would certainly welcome anybody?
Okay. And how would they be able to reach you, Howard?
You can reach me by calling the main number. It's the 412-233-8113. I'm option 8.
Mhm.
Option 3 is the finance office. But when you get my recorded message, to who to talk to, from the mayor to council to code enforcement to
Mhm.
police,
Yeah.
to myself or the finance office. My email is manager@cityofclariton.com.
Mhm.
Or if you go on our website, you can just press on and leave a message that is basically a general mailbox, but
Mhm.
it comes to me.
Oh, okay.
So I answer it, and then I would pass it on to, if it's a situation for the police, code, or the finance or whatever. So you can reach us any which way, or stop in
Okay.
the finance office. If I'm not there, they'll take your name and number, and I'll give you a call back. Or if it's something you want to have a meeting, we can set that up. That's not a problem.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Howard.
I appreciate it. Hope it didn't go on too long, but
No, no, it's good
but I
information. Good
appreciate
information.
getting the information out because, like I said, it's we're in competition with other communities,
Mhm.
to get residents and businesses, and Clairton's reputation when it was Act 47. Uh, People said, when you come out of Act 47, did it mean, we didn't get any huge sum of money or anything,
Yeah.
but it took that stigma away.
Mhm.
Because when you say you're a distressed community, um, that has a lot of bad connotations.
Yeah.
I mean, distressed with the state was financially.
Mhm.
That's not saying, that you're a unsafe community,
Right.
but people look at distress that, okay, why would we want to do that?
Right.
So it was nice to get rid of that, that we're no longer a distressed community. And it gives you that, like, well, they must be doing something right,
Right.
or the state wouldn't let them come out.
Right.
It wasn't us that decided, well, we don't want this anymore. You have certain criteria that you have to meet. And For those all 28 years, the state had a coordinator
Mhm.
that met with the city manager, the council, and there were some hard things that had to be decided. They had to lay some people off. They
Right.
had to raise taxes. They had to certain things that they were required to do.
Right.
It wasn't if you choose to do it, it's you have to do it.
Oh, okay.
Well, like I said, so there's certain criteria that we had to meet to come out of it. I'm very proud that we did.
Mhm.
And like I said, I think it just takes that stigma because when people would hear distress, that's not a good word.
Right. Yeah.
They just think, oh, it's bad all the way around. Well, it's
Right.
not.
Right.
I mean, Clareton, and there's a lot of communities not here. I mean, Beaver County was hit hard. I
Mhm.
mean, Aliquippa. I
Mhm.
know when we came out of Act 47, it surprised me, um, that the press coverage, the biggest article we had, and it was two full newspaper pages, was from the Beaver County Times.
Mhm.
They came down to interview me to
Mhm.
say, you're very similar to Aliquippa,
Oh, okay.
okay? They're still in Act 47. What did you do that maybe
Mhm.
they can do it? But I know from having lived in Beaver County, Ambridge, Aliquippa, Beaver Falls, Monaca, Midland,
Mhm.
when the steel industry went down, they were devastated.
Mhm.
And you think it's not easy because it's not like another business will come in and take its place. I
Right.
mean, the steel industry was huge,
Yeah.
and it employed a lot of people, paid a lot of taxes. And when you look at Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
that it was hit hard. So,
Yeah.
um, like I said, it was tough, but we persevered and came
Yeah.
out. And I think it was just a good feeling that you think, okay, we're doing something right.
Right. Yeah.
And like I said, it hopefully gives a positive image of Clareton because you can deal with buildings, you can deal with sewers, you can deal with infrastructure.
Right.
The thing that you can't pass an ordinance to do is saying, we're going to pass an ordinance that everybody has to feel great about Clareton. That you can't do that. You
Right.
have to that's just the people. But if we get people to move here and then the word gets out that hey, Clareton, they have
Yeah.
this, it's a nice little community.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Because
Yeah.
again, the more people you get, more houses are occupied, more taxes,
Mhm.
more people paying earned income if they're working, because people want the services. I had somebody in Forest Hills where we raised the garbage once said, well, you shouldn't raise the garbage fee. The borough should pay that.
Mhm.
And this was a former council person.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, who do you think is the borough? I
Yeah.
mean, I always joke that, we were doing great until the FBI said, Howard, you can't print money anymore. Oh, damn, I mean, the people are the city,
Yeah.
that, if you want this, and this, and it costs, we go for grants. I mean, I said, we've gotten a lot of grants,
Yeah.
and I'm very proud of that, and we will continue. But like I said, on the day-to-day services, for police and public
Mhm.
works and that, um, we just purchased a new dump truck and plow and everything, $125,000.
Yeah.
Okay, rock salt, it's $88 a ton,
Mhm.
and you figure this past winter,
Yeah.
we
It was
used a
really,
lot
yeah,
of
it
it.
used a
So you
lot of it.
think, and people they get used to and spoiled. And this
Yeah.
is anywhere that you
Yeah.
think all my roads were always plowed and salted. Well, if all of a sudden they're not plowed and salted, you're upset.
Yeah.
But like I said, we want to continue that.
Right.
But just like your household, everything costs money.
Yeah.
So you try and do the best you can. You streamline stuff, and
Mhm.
you're careful watching your money, whether it's here, a business, or in your house.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you want fancy this, you got to pay for it. You need the money.
Yeah.
So, and I'm very proud. We don't have any debt.
Yeah.
We have no debt. At the beginning of a year, most municipalities will go out for it's called a tax anticipation loan.
Mhm.
That if you think, look, we need $500,000 to get us through January and February, then we
Right.
start. In my 15 year, we've never done that. We've never needed it because
Right.
we've had the money to
Yeah.
continue paying our bills. Now, our bank balance will go down, but then when taxes and garbage, it goes back up.
Yeah.
But we're not paying interest on that.
Mm.
So we have no debt right now in the city. We
Oh,
are
okay.
debt free, which is
Yeah.
nice. A lot
That
of
is nice.
municipalities can't say that.
Yeah.
Uh, but like I said, we've worked hard and we want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Let the people know we're working for them.
Yep.
At least we're trying. So
Well, that's good. And thank you, Howard, for all that information. It was
thank you.
definitely good information for the people to know. So please subscribe, like, and share this video. Comment and let me know what you think and would like to see in future videos. See you next week when we seek more wisdom through real estate. God bless.